Hello, my name is Raphael Sbarge, and welcome to the FirstGlance Film Festival panel, talking with filmmakers about how to get distribution, kind of the the golden ticket, as it were, the holy grail of answers for independent filmmakers. Thank you for joining us. Obviously, these are we live in a Zoom world, and we are all trying to find ways to create community. Obviously, in this case, StreamYard is our platform. We have also It's a Short is being our host. Thank you to them for giving us this platform. And I am particularly interested in this conversation because obviously, as a filmmaker myself, and because this is sort of what gets discussed after film festivals and in bars and in restaurants over coffee, is how'd you do it? How'd you make it work? How did you actually finally take this idea, once you've made it, to actually get to a place where people will actually see it? It's so unbearably hard. And as we know, being an independent filmmaker, it's it's an act of passion and an act of determination, to be sure. There's so many challenges along the road. So the fact that in this case we've got filmmakers who can talk about how they've done it, this is enormously helpful. And while you'll perhaps find your own road, drawing from other people's experience clearly is always helpful. So we have several people perhaps who are coming. At the moment, we have the two wonderful filmmakers who have their stories. And this is Phillip, Carroll, and Bill Crossland. Hi guys.
Hey guys.
What I'm going to do perhaps is maybe I could sort of start with each of you telling me the story of the film, perhaps, that found distribution. I mean, both of you might have several films, but maybe you could give me kind of an outline of what the story is, what the genre is, what and kind of the outline of kind of where the film landed, I guess, and then maybe we can sort of dig in from there. Phil, do you want to start first?
Sure. So my first feature film just got distribution. It's called The Honeymoon Phase. It's a sci-fi psychological thriller about a struggling young couple who enters an experiment that's paying $50,000 for couples to live in a remote mountain house for a month while their relationship's analyzed, to try and find out why couples fall out of love. And over the course of their stay, the young woman, Eve, slowly starts to go mad as she begins to question if her lover is really the man that she thinks he is. We pitched it as Black Mirror meets Fatal Attraction. It was kind of the combination we were going for. And we shot it in January of 2018, and it just got released by Dark Sky Films on August 20th, 2020. So it's been quite a journey to get from finishing the film to the distribution side. So I'm excited to share some hopefully helpful nuggets here.
That's amazing. All right, Bill, tell me about your film and tell me what genre it's in.
Yeah, so the film's called Catching Up. We also shot it in 2018. It was the summer of 2018. It's sort of a romantic comedy / drama in the vein of like John Hughes 80s movies. It's about this romantically inexperienced guy with muscular dystrophy who's struggling to win the love of his able-bodied crush, who recently re-entered his life. It's like his childhood crush comes back into his life, and he's trying to, grapple with his own self-confidence issues and going on sort of these zany romantic adventures, trying to figure out how to sort of win her affections. So there's a lot of, character comedy in it, and hopefully, people think some heart as well. So that was shot in 2018 over the summer, and we recently just got picked up for digital distribution by Freestyle Digital Media. So we're going to be having our release on November 24th. Right now we're just in the thick of it, sort of trying to get the word out, promoting the release, and fingers crossed it goes well. So that's where we're at right now.
That's just great. So let me just start with you, just to ask a question, Bill. I mean, I understand that it traveled perhaps through Sundance, is that right? And ultimately being that you shot it in 2018, were you thinking about distribution when you were making the film? Did you self-fund this? What was that process?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, distribution was sort of mysterious to me at first. This is also my first feature, much like Phil's. So that was sort of like, down the road, something that we always knew we'd have to sort of navigate. But I mean, as we all know at the beginning, it's more like, how do we fund this movie? So that was, the main thing at first. We did have a short at Sundance that was, we took a piece of the script for this, turned it into a short film to try to prove the concept. Managed to get it to Sundance in 2016. Had a good response. I was pleasantly surprised. People really seemed to like it. So that kind of made us take the next step. So yeah, once we finally were able to get funding, obviously we shot it. Post-production took a little while, and distribution. I think, like you said, there's people ever find their different roads to it. So we had sort of a multi-path approach to try to get people interested in it, so that we could eventually get distribution. So yeah, there was definitely different tactics that we wanted to try to cast the net wide in terms of trying to get bites for distribution. So I can definitely talk more about that.
So there's that moment, of course, where you've like, oh my God, I've just spent a year of my life or more making this freaking movie. I've put every dollar I have into this thing. I've begged, borrowed, and stealed from family, and taxed my friendships, and I've made this film, and now it's done. And now you get to face the realized face of like, what the hell do I do with it, right? So
exactly.
where did you go? Did you go to film festivals? Did you how do you even get to distributors? What was your process?
Well, film festivals definitely played a big part. I would say we had three main paths to this. Not really knowing which would pan out, but film festivals was one of them, and then also. We were prepared to sort of cold call, distributors if we had to, but we ultimately ended up feeling that we could afford to and wanted to bring on a producer's rep for the project. So that's, if anybody doesn't know, it's somebody that, consults on festivals, but also mainly has existing, relationships with distributors, so they can, sort of more efficiently pitch your film where they think it fits best, the companies that might be most receptive to the project. So we did work with producer rep. Also festivals, we really tried to get it out there in case that would help somebody find it and maybe think, oh, this would fit with our roster. And also just, networking through our cast and crew. Some people in our cast already had film distributed with certain company, so they would maybe try to connect us with them, and ultimately it was a combination of all three that I think got us to distribution, because we had, our producer rep had a relationship with our distributor. One of our cast members did have a movie released with them before, so sort of put in a word with us there. And the festival stuff always helps. If you can get into the right festivals, I think it lends you a certain amount of credibility. So I'm grateful that we were able to get into some really good festivals as well.
Yeah, Sundance obviously being kind of the gold standard, so that's just fantastic. Even though it was the short, so that which
right.
led the way. Phillip, what was your route? Did you have a sort of a plan for distribution while you were making the film? I know you went through Project Greenlight, so that was it's impressive that obviously that you got in there and became finalist. But were you thinking about that when you were making the movie?
Yeah, from the beginning, it was really important to us to treat this as both an artistic pursuit, but also a business, because we want to hopefully do this again. So the film has to at least break even for us to be able to do that. So when we were in pre-production, kind of like Bill was saying, we had multiple things going on at the same time to hope that one of them would pan out. So as you mentioned, we were in the Project Greenlight Shutter competition, which the materials that we prepped for that were also like Kickstarter pitch materials. So we could, kill two birds with one stone. And that competition, though we didn't win it, we made it to the finals and got a fellowship with Shutter Labs, and that helped us really prep the script production. And it also gave some confidence to, the gentleman who became our investor, by seeing that we did well in this competition and we had all our ducks in a row from it. He really believed in not only the project, but my wife and I, who produced the film, our passion for it. So he came on board that. And we were in pre-production for it's pretty much September to January when we shot. And during that time, we also started doing research into distribution. So we went to the American Film Market in Santa Monica in November. It takes place there typically in person every November. This year it was virtual because of everything with COVID. But it was a really eye-opening experience going there because you really see how people who aren't involved in the creative view films. It's basically a commodity. It's the same thing as like oil or gold. Like they're all just trading films without a care in the world for what the creative aspect is. It's just about how can we make money off of this, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But as a filmmaker, it's definitely an eye-opening experience to see that in the end, your film's just going to be a commodity. And you have to, come to terms with that. If you're lucky enough to get the financing for the movie to, make your dream come true, you have to then trust people to then take that and hopefully make some money off of it. So the American Film Market was a place that we went pretty much yearly for about 3 years when we were in pre-production and then post-production on the film, just to get a sense of what the market was like. We took meetings with some companies, but we realized pretty quickly that unless you're an established name, people either don't take you seriously or they try and pull one over on you because you're naive. So we ended up going with a sales agent for the project. So they take a commission based off of the sales of the film. But in exchange for that, they represent your film at these markets and reach out to distribution companies, previous contacts that they have. They help with the marketing materials, all that stuff. And our sales agent was able to open doors that we never would have been able to open for the film with the distribution. And he was the one that was able to broker the deal with Dark Sky Films then. That's
great. So is the producer's rep and the sales agent, are they essentially the same thing, or are they different? Do they serve different roles?
I have no real firsthand experience with the sales agent, so maybe Phil can answer that. But from my understanding, I think, in practical terms, what they're trying to help you accomplish is very similar in terms of,
right.
exploiting existing relationships with people that you might not otherwise have access to.
Right.
And sort of getting your foot in the door. So I think, you can confirm that sounds like the general goal of each.
Yeah, so, I think that I just wanted to add to that. I think that does sound, right, Bill. I was curious from your point of view because I've never worked with a producer's rep, but our sales agent, I guess he also then became a producer's rep because he came on board the project as an executive producer then in order to make connections to some film festivals that he had relationships with. So I think he walked that line then of sales rep and producer's rep.
Are they in both of your cases, were they a pay upfront fee, or were they sort of essentially pay on sales essentially?
Ours was commission based.
Ours was a small engagement fee, and then a percentage of sales based on whatever deal they help acquire for you, which was also pretty reasonable in our case.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, obviously, the thing is this, there's once you make your film, and again, it's no small thing just to freaking go from, sitting around your kitchen table having this idea and then actually sort of making it flesh, right? It's a huge thing. But then it just becomes another piece of digital content on a hard drive unless you actually can sort of get it to an audience. So in this indie world, it sounds like in both of your cases, reaching out to people who are established or who had relationships, who had connections, helped kind of open doors with festivals and or even also with people who might be interested looking for this kind of content.
Yeah, and like Bill was saying, our sales agent we met through a friend of ours that we met at Shutter Labs. So it's all relationships in the film industry. So they were able to, we showed her our film and she liked it and was like, "Hey, why don't I put you in touch with the sales agent who repped my film?" And that connection then became the relationship that we have now.
Yeah. How did you meet your producer's rep, Bill?
That was sort of one of those things that had crossover with our other kind of the paths we were on in terms of getting the film out there. I believe he found us through one of our festival screenings. So, I think he either heard about it or saw it at one of the festivals. That might have been New Orleans Film Festival, and reached out and asked, if he could see the film because it sounded like something that would be appealing to him for the company to work with. So, yeah, it's one of those things where I think, like Phil sort of implied, a lot of it's relationships and a lot of it's also, I think, luck as well. I mean, in terms of the best thing you can do is sort of get it out there to some extent, especially with the festival stuff. That really helped us, I think, with, if somebody can see what you're doing, then it becomes more real. So you're not just sort of endlessly pitching, doing elevator pitches to people. It's like, okay, we can see there's a tangible thing here. You're out screening this film, so let's check it out, like that kind of a thing. So that's how we got in touch.
That's great. And how did you? I mean, in terms of, you both had the brilliant, foresight to submit to the FirstGlance Film Festival. But how did you? How did you determine what film festivals were, worth their weight? How did you? Both of you be curious. How? Sundance, obviously, but in terms of, how do you? What's the kind of the evaluation process to sort of figure out whether you're going to submit or not?
I know for us, we use like Film Freeway to find festivals, but almost more importantly, we found like comparable films online and then looked at their festival run and made a list of festivals that they went to. And then we kind of had a sense of, would our film be accepted here based off of, previous acceptances, budget range, quality, genre, and all of that stuff. So that was kind of the research that we did.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Also, as you guys know, there's a certain line item in the budget for festival submissions. So a lot of it is sort of weighing.
It goes up very quickly, right?
Yeah, a lot of it's weighing, how much do we have to spend? And then we went and tried to find, festivals that were around, for a certain amount of years, so that we knew that had, somewhat of a following, so that if we did get into them, that it would sort of be more bang for our buck in terms of exposure. Obviously, ones that were well reviewed, well regarded, because Sundance is great, but it's not the only thing out there. It's a badge you can put on your lapel, but it's not. There's tons of great festivals, and so we managed to get into. It was cool. We managed to find and get into some that were sort of spread out all in different areas of the country. So it was cool to also have that multi-regional type of thing. So we tried to do that as well.
That's just great. I wonder. Now of course both of you have films that you've made and that you've completed. Again, these are giant hurdles, and then now you've sort of found a way for them to reach their audiences. If you're making your next film, obviously, hopefully, you're not using your own credit cards the next time. Hopefully, sometimes going to actually give you the money to make it, in success. We'll give you more money and go make here's a wonderful idea. Go make another one. But what's the process after you've had your first film reach distribution?
Still figuring that out, I guess. It's I've heard from people that the joke is that your second one's even harder than your first one to make, because you have to prove that you're not a one-trick pony. You can do it again.
Oh my God.
So it's gearing up to prove everybody wrong one more time. And then that's probably rinse and repeat, and that's a career then. But for me, it's kind of looking at the things that I learned from making the honeymoon phase. What can I do differently next time to make this maybe a little less painful of a journey? Like, for instance, with the film festivals, I think I would have brought on a sales agent or producer's rep prior to submitting to festivals, because they could have helped us in terms of recommendations and maybe opening some doors with some pre-existing relationships. So kind of gearing up for the next one now, bringing somebody like that on board up front, because I think that could also help with casting. Like knowing who's sellable overseas is really important. So I'd like to bring on a sales agent up front to help navigate that minefield. And then, on our film, we had a Pennsylvania state tax credit. So that was a really great help in getting the movie made. So, looking into that on the next one, that's another big thing. But for me, it's kind of looking at what I did wrong on the last one that I can then apply to hopefully make the next one even better. And also leverage the relationships that we've been building over the past 3 years to, collaborate with new people to hopefully do something bigger and better this time.
That's great.
Yeah.
And they make new mistakes, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what we always do, right?
And like we were both saying, I mean, this is kind of a first rodeo in some ways, in terms of having a feature put out there. But the way I look at it, it generally is, I think there's two aspects to it. Is, simply having something release, where you got it done, maybe you kept it within budget, hopefully, and you kept your schedule and you managed to complete it and get it out there. I think that, that's one thing where it's like, you've proven you can do it. And the hope is that somebody will notice that and maybe give you the chance to do it on a slightly bigger scale next time.
Right.
And then the other aspect, obviously, is how does it play with the audience? And obviously, both of those things together that's the dream. But I think a lot of this stuff, getting into festivals, getting someone to notice it, getting it released eventually. I mean, a lot of it's luck, and a lot of it's like just trying your best to make something that people want to see. Because I think, especially now with people really looking for new content in this crazy time, I think just trying to please the audience, entertain people. Basically, I just think it's like, I've seen, Phil's movie, the ads for that and everything, and it looks entertaining and stuff, and it looks like a fun sci-fi story that people would enjoy. Basically, what I'm saying is, I think, besides the commerce and the luck, making something that's not just, a boring art house film where your head's up your butt, and you're actually trying to entertain people. I think, especially now, hopefully that means something.
Yeah. So in other words, that thinking commercially about, thinking about the commercial aspect of the film, sort of at inception, essentially, right?
Right, like, because it's, like Phil was saying, it can feel a little bit oppressive sometimes when you're dealing with all this business side of things, especially when you're, also the director, and have that creative mindset. But yeah, I don't think thinking commercially is necessarily, a bad thing either,
No.
or a dirty word, especially if it helps you reach the people that are going to love your product.
Right. Yeah, I mean, do Phil, do you find yourself wanting to do more of a similar genre? Do you want to sort of break out of that genre? Is that where in terms of the next one?
Yeah, I always like to I guess follow wherever my passion is at that moment. So it's not necessarily like, oh, I want to do thrillers the rest of my life. I always follow just where, what's the story I really want to tell in this moment, and then what genre is the best form for that film. So the next thing I'm working on is it's like a high school dramedy. So it's the furthest thing from my last film that could be, which, I'm sure that will bring its own challenges, because now I have to prove to somebody that I can do that type of film and not just a sci-fi thriller. But that's part of what makes the job fun and interesting, constantly doing new stuff and interesting stuff. So, yeah.
Right. I mean, also particularly because, once you take it on, you're with it for probably 2 years of your life, right? So you better really want to do it, right? So it's got to be sort of new and fresh, and if you've already done the one, like turn the page and let's try and do something else, right?
Yeah, and on that note too, I think that at least the approach that I'm taking the second time is pretty much the same approach I've taken since I was doing short films, which is you settle on a story that you really want to tell, and you find a way to tell it no matter what. And then what ends up happening from that is people end up kind of joining your cause because they see that you're doing something and you're passionate about it. So like the honeymoon phase, we were originally going to, we had every intent to make that for like 20 grand, kickstart it, put whatever money we had in savings, money that I was making shooting wedding videos, and make the movie for cheap. But, once the train gets going, it's hard to stop. And what ends up happening is people want to get on board with you, and the project grows. So I'm taking that approach with the second one, where I'm hoping, if I go into it with the mindset that no matter what, I'll find a way to do it, even if it is a lower budget than I did with the honeymoon phase, people will end up wanting to come on board because they'll see the passion there and the train moving, and they'll want to join.
Were you able to do it for $20,000? I mean,
no.
Which is, no.
No, not at all.
That's adorable.
Your craft service budget, right?
that was the blessing in it. You go into it with the mindset of we're going to do it for 20, and then once you bring on an investor, it opens doors so that you can have the production value 10 times that. So hopefully that happens this second time, and if not, then you do it for 20 grand, and you still find a way to make your film.
Right. Bill, do you find with your next one, because I imagine once you finish the film, there's obviously many hats we wear, right? So you gotta conceive it, and then you gotta write it, and then you've got to cast it and produce it and direct it, and then you gotta post it, and then you deliver it, and then you gotta put on the producer hat and then sell it to an outlet, and then but at the point that it's locked and kind of out of your control, at that point, in other words, it's done, then potentially it leaves room for the next one. So in terms of your next one, do you feel like you're what direction are you thinking to move in? Something similar or different?
I should say that ours is a sort of a romantic dramedy that takes place largely in a high school, and my next script is sci-fi. So me and Phil just traded genres.
Same thing. High school sci-fi. It's a similar genre.
We'll compare notes.
Yeah, exactly. The next one will be a sci-fi in a high school.
There you go. Right.
But same thing with us. Me and my writing partner recently finished a draft of a script that has like a sci-fi element, which we would love to be our next project. It would definitely have to be a bigger scale than what we just did. So that'll depend on where things go, obviously. But I too would like to do many different genres, if I'm lucky enough to go on and make more movies.
Can you take what you have, this relationship with this outlet or distributor? Can you take your new project back to them? Is that an outlet to?
I would assume so. I think a lot, and honestly, some of it might depend on performance of how the movie does when it's released, in terms of going back to the same distributor. But I think if your relationship with them is good, it's definitely a solid possibility. It's definitely something that you should keep as an option, because like Phil said, building those relationships, it can only help to go back. Once you have your next thing, people might be interested in that too. So it's every new connection you make, I think you got to add to your roster in terms of trying to pull off the next one.
Right. Is there, so, we start somewhere, with an act of insanity, like, hey, I'm going to make a movie. And then you actually, complete it, and then you get kind of to where you are. If you're talking to someone who's sort of at that earlier stage, or maybe if you're talking to the younger version of yourself, what are you, knowing what you know now, what would you do different from the beginning?
The first thing I would tell them is kind of what I was rambling about before is, make something that you really love, like you said, Raphael, because you're going to be stuck with it for a while. and also make something that you think, you would want to watch and other people will want to watch. Because it took, a long time. It takes a long time to just write a script, and you have to work on it and make sure it's entertaining, because, that's the goal. For me, it's all about the audience. That's like the end point, to try to, make people feel something and provide an escape for them. So I would say, that's kind of the driving force for me. So I definitely tell somebody in this position starting out to like hold on to that, because that's like, I think that's what drives it, the creative side of it, and gets you through those like few years of pure hell.
Yeah.
But in terms of like advice to give myself, I mean, look, there's some things you're just not going to know starting out. So I guess I wouldn't be too hard on people, but I would say, learn how to be a little more cutthroat. Probably that would probably be my advice. And just in terms of, when a lot of this is business, and when you're doing business transactions and dealing with all sorts of different people and personalities, you got to be able to sort of protect yourself and your project, and, just know how to advocate for yourself, and make smart business decisions. And, just don't feel like just because you're a nobody starting out that you should let people, sort of take advantage of you, or, treat you like, you're naive, so they can just, walk all over you and stuff. So I think, being a discerning business person and sort of just having that confidence, even if you have to fake it for a while, in that area of it, I think is important, because, it's easy in this industry for, nefarious characters to appear and, sort of try to derail you at times. So I think just, you're not going to know everything up front, but just be, smart about it, I would say.
Right. How about you, Phil?
So for me, it's always a funny piece of advice I give, but I think that when you're just starting out, being naive is like one of the best things that you can be, because, like Bill was saying, it can be hell over the course of the making of a movie, and you're naive to that hell, and it's almost a blessing, because you'll do things that people with more experience than you would never do, because they would think, oh, it's too hard, or it costs too much money, or it's too dangerous, or that's too stupid. They just don't want to take the risk. But because it's your first film, you don't know what you don't know. So my biggest piece of advice would be to talk to other filmmakers, watch panels like this, do your reading and your research and stuff. But then at the end of the day, throw it all away and go make your mark, your way, not to overthink it. Because your first film is potentially, if you're lucky enough to have a career, it might be the only time that you have full creative control. So just go wild with it and follow your heart and do what you want to do, because as soon as people start, writing the paychecks, then you're kind of locked into what their say is, whoever has the money kind of dictates what happens. So I would say, be prepared, be very detail oriented in everything that you do. But at the end of the day, just don't overthink it and go and make your movie.
Yeah, I agree with that. And also, I'm sure you would agree too that, sort of based on what I was saying before, it's like a lot of this is collaborative. It's all about the people, for a lot of the time, like who you're working with, what connection you have with them, to try to make this creative thing happen. So I would say like that was one of the great, like this movie wouldn't have been done if it wasn't for the cast and crew and the, post-production people that we were lucky enough to work with, that kind of worked overtime to get it across the finish line. So
right.
Yeah,
And that becomes your, through the connection you've made with them, through the them catching the passion that you feel and that you're expressing about the project, and then just sort of a desire to kind of want to jump on board and then give the most valuable thing people have, right, which is their time, right? So that's a huge thing. Being able to play with others is important. Sorry, were you going to say something, Phil?
No, I was just going to, agree with that and say that, you want to surround yourself with good people and people that are passionate about the film, and, people that you want to work with. It's sometimes you think that you need to hire people that are just good at their job but might be jerks. And you got to spend 48 hours a day with these people on set, so make sure you like them and make sure their heart's in the right place. Ask for references, talk to people they've worked with. I think it's important, like Bill was saying, that the film is all about collaboration. So you want people that have the same vision as you do for the project and are good people at heart.
Right. What's interesting, of course, is just that until a time that as directors, you're hired to essentially come in and maybe be a director for, on a specific project. Like someone's got a project and they saw your other film and they want to bring you on. It sounds like, while you've learned a lot, it sounds like in a certain sense, the next film, there are a lot of the same challenges that you face. Similar mountains to climb. Again, the making of the film, and while casting can help you with foreign sales, and while the relationships that you have can obviously open maybe some doors and get some interest or get some meetings, at the end of the day, making your movie is really it falls to you to sort of do that, and you may have to sort of rediscover a new distributor, a new outlet, or a new set of circumstances or relationships once you're done with that film. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I just assume it's going to be absolutely insane in a whole new set of ways.
Yeah, exactly. I always tell people that being a filmmaker, it's like a lifestyle. It's not at least at the independent level, until you have a career at it, you have to be okay with, eating ramen all the time and not, buying the nicest stuff, because it's, this is a way of life as opposed to a 9-to-5 job, that you go to 5 days a week. Right.
When I go back to something you said early on, Bill, is that there's obviously a fair amount of luck in this as well. The fact that the film got into Sundance or the film got into Project Greenlight, those things are kind of like, giant, happy accidents. Now they're based on your merit. You don't fall into that just because, you're nice guys. But how there's no real direct road to that. It's hard to know how what that road ahead is.
Yeah, right? Look, I think there's so many ways to come at this, and I would certainly say to maybe younger filmmakers or people who are just starting to plan their first feature or whatever. Just because I can't speak for Phil, but just because I got to this point doesn't mean that we didn't make major mistakes or stumble or not know what the hell we were doing. Like, even just getting to the point where we could fund the film, we didn't know what the heck we were doing. We were, younger and we had less experience, and, we tried a lot of different things before something popped. For example, for us, we had that chicken or the egg thing where it's like, what do you get first, money or cast? So, when we started out, the first person we hired was our casting director, and we spent a while trying to get cast interested, to try to, get some more attention for the project. And ultimately, through some conflicts and stuff, like that didn't end up working out. And we had to, reimagine the project with a smaller budget. And once we did that, things started coming together. So, but, there was, that took a while to realize, oh, this isn't working. Let's reframe it and, and not just give up, but let's give this one more shot with it in a different approach. And, then it worked out, but it's definitely, there's definitely a lot of different ways to come at it. And it's not going to be perfect the first time.
Right. Phil, do you have a similar sentiment in that regard? What's your thought about that?
Yeah. I think that each time it's, there's new challenges that are going to come about. So you have to find a way to navigate those. And, for us, like Bill was saying, we made plenty of mistakes throughout the entire process. And there were times where we thought we were screwed and that was it. There was no movie, or the movie was done and then we didn't get into a big festival for a premiere. And then we're like, shit, what happens now? If we don't go to Sundance or Tribeca or something, will the film get distribution? And then even all the way through distribution, your film comes out and then you're having a heart attack, checking the iTunes rankings, every 5 minutes to see how you're doing. And, it's just constantly learning things that you didn't know that hopefully we can apply to the next one. So it's, I think as long as you go into these endeavors with the mind of like an entrepreneur, where each film is like a startup company, and every time you do it, you're going to have to start from the basics again. But also every time you do it, you go in with the knowledge that you gained from the last time you did it. So you can make all new mistakes. I think if you go in with that mindset, you'll be well served.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, because in terms of just really sort of, so many times films, the idea for a film comes out of, I've got a great story, or, my friend, he's a writer and I want to do something. I mean, it comes out of, I guess, sort of a more amorphous kind of creative flow of things, particularly in the indie world, right? So the idea of thinking of it as a startup, as a business, as a kind of a, you got front of house and back of house, kind of like a, people come in and, like I think about a restaurant, right? So you've got the people who serve the people, and you've got the kitchen downstairs, right? So you've got to figure that whole sort of flow out and figure out how to kind of really, in the midst of a creative idea, really think of it sort of much larger than just kind of trying to tell a cool story, that might be visually cool.
I think when you're getting a project off the ground, going with your restaurant analogy, it's like you're the chef, but you're at your home kitchen and it's just you and the ingredients, and you're by yourself, and you can make the mistakes while you're writing your film and protect it all that you can. But then eventually you do have to build the restaurant once you have, your recipe ready. And at that point, not every filmmaker is a manager. So like you might just be a chef, and that's perfectly okay. But then you have to go out and find somebody to manage, the restaurant. So I think once you get a good script and you're happy with your material, if you're not business minded, then you should look for a business partner to kind of take the lead on that side of things. And
hope that you don't get raided by the health inspector.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. There you go. Right. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because there's between, some of the things you said, casting directors and sales reps and producing partners and, being able to take a project. I mean, I guess it goes back to that whole thing about, everyone has a great idea that they've been walking around with, like some newfangled, beer bottle opener or something, whatever it is. And yeah, that's cool. And you tell your family and they're like, yeah, that's cool. But then actually, how do you get that over? How do you get that to market? And so the two of you obviously have done what, sort of, it's almost the impossible. It's sort of the 1 in a million, right? Which is you've taken an idea, you've seen it through, you've seen success, and now you've been able to, you've gotten it out to the audience. That's, so hard, but thinking sort of top to bottom with how to be able to kind of get it out, I guess. Well, now I'm split between two questions. The next question then is once you've gotten the distribution, and now, Phil, your film is coming out. Sorry, you told me it's coming out now. Is that right?
Yeah, it's currently on iTunes, Amazon Prime, all the big rental platforms and digital platforms, as well as DVD. Right,
and Bill, yours is coming out. What's the next hurdle? I guess what's that next? Okay, so now you've got the film, you've got the platform, it's going to be released. Now, what's the next mountain? I guess.
Well, I guess it's interesting because me and Phil are sort of on either side of it right now. Like we're about to release,
right,
and so right now we're in the heat of sort of promotion and trying to make people aware of it, that it exists, and that they can go see it in the 2 weeks from now, I guess. So that's where we're at right now is trying to reach the audience and trying to capitalize on the connections or the exposure we've gotten from our festival run, and also trying to work social media to the best of our ability, which I suck at. But I'm learning to live with it. So we're trying to just set it up so that we can have success when it drops. Hopefully, that people who would enjoy it can find it. So we're sort of in the hustle right now. So maybe Phil can weigh in on how that went for them, and give me some pro tips here. But I'd be interested to hear, since you're on the other side of it, you guys have been out for a while, what that's like as well. Because I think, in my mind, the next, the next hurdle, this is kind of the final hurdle, I think, in terms of this project, because, what can you do besides make sure people know about the damn thing and kind of have some kind of interest in watching it. So beyond that, it's sort of out of your hands in terms of, besides keeping up with the audience and engaging with them and, seeing their feedback and stuff. So I think, I'd love to hear about your side of it too.
Yeah, we the distributor that we had a publicist that worked with us on brokering like the reviews and putting us in touch with podcasts and stuff, which was really helpful. But when you're working with mid-tier distributors, they have or even large scale, they have films coming out every week. So you got to capitalize on your slot, as much as you can, because, they're going to move on to the next one. So for us, once the initial PR push was done, we started reaching out to people on Twitter and YouTube. Like I just would, on YouTube, search, DVD reviews, and then find YouTubers that review DVDs, and then reach out to them saying, hey, do you want a free copy? Would you do a review on our film? Same thing with the podcast. Like, I'd look up other films that were similar to ours, see what podcast they were on, and then reach out to the podcasters through Twitter, or if I could find their email address, and all sizes. So like we were on podcasts that had tens of thousands of followers, but then ones that had maybe 50. Because, even if we get 2 sales from that one, it was worth it in our book, because that becomes word of mouth traction that, so, I would say to you, Bill, too, just going into it, if you have a publicist, that'll be really helpful. But if you don't, or even if you do, I would also be your own best publicist and reach out to different reviewers and things like that, to get the word out there. Because unfortunately, nobody loves your film as much as you do.
It sucks, doesn't it?
It really does.
It's true. Yeah. And nobody's going to fight as hard for it. That's the real, Like, so I totally get that. I'm working my spreadsheet right now of all the outlets that I'm going to try, so let the fun begin.
I think in your, for everybody listening too, when you reach out to different media outlets or Twitter users or YouTubers, your email should like be a story crafted, to catch their attention and kind of be like, why is this newsworthy? Why would you want to cover my story? What festivals have I been in, or who's in the cast, or, why would your audience care about hearing about this? I think that's really helpful in framing, your communications with the media.
Right. The kind of that going back to that elevator pitch, or if you can't get it on a matchbook, if you can't write the story on a matchbook, then it doesn't translate, right? And trying to figure out a way to kind of capture people's attention, trying to break through the noise, as it were, because there's just so much competing for people's attention. Yeah. Sorry, were you going to say something, Bill?
No, I was just agreeing with that. Very wise point.
I guess again, there's just in the indie film of this, creators, filmmakers, people who are crazy enough to take this on. And again, I salute you, but it's so, any filmmaker who wants to take this on, but it's challenging, really challenging. And what's clear is that there's a lot of different facets of this that require people's additional expertise to kind of help bring you to market. And then once you're at, to get eyeballs, and then to help kind of figure out a way to keep it moving, or keep being talked about, or keep trying to find a way to kind of get attention to it, or for it. Those things are require publicists and relationships that obviously, are just sort of across a span of a lot of different things, which maybe in this case, when you're thinking about, hey, I want to make a movie, people are not sort of thinking so sort of full spectrum, which of course, once you've made a movie, I think, the finances of it, the complexities of sales of it become more, it's less of a fresh-faced idea. It's more like it's a commodity, it's a thing, and be able to think of it that way. Is that fair enough to say?
Yeah, I think, it's just sort of, I mean, especially with the first feature, you're just sort of like going from phase to phase, and you plan a lot of it out, and you research a lot of it, and you try to get stories of people that have done it before. But at some level, you're just stumbling from phase to phase, and like, all right, now what do we have to learn how to do? Now that we accomplished this phase, all right, now what do we have to learn how to do now? So, I mean, yeah, it all starts out with, some young filmmaker thinking they have an idea they want to make into a movie, and it all sounds like fun and games. And then you got to learn also, the business side of it, and the project management side of things, and you're a public relations expert all of a sudden. So, I think, I mean, for me personally, just to go back to what I said before, what sort of propelled me through, the long road of business, eventually, taking center stage, as opposed to the pure creative side of it, is just looking forward to getting it out to the audience that I hope will enjoy it. So I think that helps to sort of like keep you engaged, even when you're going through like the sort of monotonous or complicated business side of things.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of the business challenges that we're like referring to too, they all grow depending on what the scope of your project is. So
Right.
If you're making your first feature for 10,000 or less, a lot of the stuff that we're talking about isn't going to be, on your radar, at least when you're making the film initially,
Mm-hmm.
because you're only going to have to recoup $10,000, which that's still a big challenge. But if you made a solid ultra low budget film, you might be able to go to conventions and hustle for a couple of years and make that money back. If you're doing a film that's hundreds of thousands of dollars, then it's a whole different ball game in terms of, distribution, getting, lawyers to represent you with contracts and things like that.
Right.
So it all depends on what you want for your first feature. You could do it smaller, and like primer or something like that, sub 10,000, and just focus solely on the creativity until it's done. There's nothing wrong with that. So yeah.
Yeah, it's all proportional.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And both of you went to film school, is that right?
I did. Yeah.
Yep.
Did you was this spoken about in film school? Was there any sense of kind of this part?
No, not where I went.
Well, the good thing about having a film degree is that if you ever run out of toilet paper, you can use it. No, but I would say like the best thing I got out of film school were the connections I've made with other aspiring filmmakers that we could work together. That's why I met my writing partner and became friends with him and stuff. So
right.
And you do sort of make your own practical sort of experiences in film school when you actually go out and film things or editing things, like that was valuable. But yeah, in terms of film theory, they don't teach you about lawyers and production. I mean, some of them talk about production budgets, but lawyers and distribution and how to navigate that. So some of it's helpful and some of it's toilet paper.
Right. It's a bit of a cold shower when you actually walk into the real world.
Right.
So what about you? I mean, is any of the business of this, any of the kind of the nuts and bolts of this, was this discussed?
I took a fundraising course that was really good, and that was helpful. But the majority of the courses were more the creative stuff and film theory, like Bill was saying. I think, well, that's just a general education complaint that I have, where I don't think they teach enough of the nuts and bolts things. Like I wish I was forced to take an accounting class at some point in my life. You know, it would have made my taxes every year a hell of a lot easier if I was forced to do that. Or even just cooking classes, you know, let alone business classes in a film program. You know, I went to a liberal arts school that had a film program, and I actually think that I gained more from the liberal arts side of things than I did from the film program, because it allowed me to learn things that I wouldn't have sought out otherwise, and gave me things to discuss in my stories. And that was really helpful. And the social skills aspect of college was really helpful too. I came from the suburbs, and going to a city school was a really eye-opening experience to see, you know, that, you know, people don't all live in bubbles. So that was helpful. But yeah, my opinion on film schools in general is, you know, if you are more of a timid person or a shy person coming from a bubble, then I think a film school in a city would be good and helpful to kind of grow as a person. But if you're looking just to make movies and you kind of already have that stuff together, you might be better served putting that money towards a couple short films, or your own feature, as opposed to going into debt for college.
Or if you do go to film school, yeah, I would agree and say also production-oriented classes. Yes, like anything hands-on was the most valuable, whether it be creative writing or, you know, videography or, you know, editing classes. Like those were all valuable in some way. The film theory stuff, I'm not a fan, but I think, you know, in terms of practical experience, it's better to have, you know, get your hands dirty in terms of learning how to make movies and how to mess up making movies, you know, before you go out and do it with other people's money.
Yeah.
Right.
And
YouTube's
a free film school now too. So if and pretty much anything you'd want to learn is on YouTube at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right. Even also just in terms of sort of finding a visual style for a film as well, you can go and sort of plug something in and find all sorts of amazing stuff, right? Just creatively. Yeah. Film school. I mean, you know, because I also work as an actor, and I know that a lot of acting schools are sort of stuck in theory and don't talk about the nuts and bolts of this. So you know, it's wonderful to have the kind of the big ideas and be able to sit down and talk about, you know, the great, you know, the French wave, or, you know, the Australian wave, or, you know, your favorite directors' key moments, but to be able to figure out how to plan a film and think all the way through to the end, where you're actually considering, okay, eventually this is going to be done, God willing, and at that point, then I'm going to have to try and find someone who's going to want to see it. So how do you start at the top with an idea that also is already considering a market, that's considering an outlet, that's considering a place that it can actually be embraced and seen. So anyway, gentlemen, thank you both for your time on this. It's, you know, again, extraordinarily commendable that you've been able to kind of do what you've done through hook and crook, and an enormous amount of passion and determination. It's really something. You know, Bill, his hashtag being support indie film, because we need the support and we need the encouragement, right? So it's definitely a challenge, but bravo to both of you for having done as much as you've done, and good luck, you know, Bill, on your release, and continued success, Phil, with, you know, your first film and then the next one. And again, thanks for the time, and thank you to everyone who's been a part of this and who's part of the FirstGlance Film Festival. Thank you, Bill, for, you know, this platform and for your continued determination to make the festival work, even in difficult times. You know, we obviously are all looking for community and trying to sort of find answers. So this is a great way to kind of gather together and try and share our collective wisdom and experience. So anyway, thank you all. I hope you find the festival and find other panels. And thank you both for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Take good care. Cheers.